agree with what Andy just said, but I also want to add this. The one thing that I think is interesting, when I was serving in Iraq, I remember there was a moment when we had a chance to see a briefing where some of the politicians had come over from the United States and they were briefed by the generals. And they put this giant box on the conference table, and one at a time they pulled out these small objects and they put them on the table. And they put out these larger objects about this big, these big copper bowls. And the senators were asking about Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they were told again and again by Lieutenant General Odierno, the Corps commander, that that wasn't the problem. The problem was the Shia militias that were backed by Iran. And when he pointed to these smaller objects, he said, these smaller objects you see are IEDs that are used to kill our soldiers in Iraq, and they're created by the Sunni insurgents. But these larger objects, these copper bowls, they're explosive force projectiles that can send a molten copper slug through an M1A1 Abrams tank and destroy it and the contents inside. They were made for the Shia militias, and they were made in Iran. When they tell you that the Iranians have nothing to do with their war on terror, they are dead wrong. Because I've seen it with my own eyes, and they've got Farsi written on the side. That is what we are facing. That's why in the state of Arizona, when we had the chance to put tough sanctions on Iran here in the state of Arizona, I made sure that we have the Iran Divestment Act here in Arizona. We're not investing our pension funds in companies that prop up this regime of terror. That is now the law of the land in the state. And that was for me, something I did for my fellow soldiers, but also for this regime that is bent on destroying the West. Another thing that we need to focus on are companies like Shell Oil and others that are not U.S.-based, that are still doing business with Iran. We need to crack down in this country. Thank you.
Senator Gifford, thank you. Next is Jesse Kelly.
Mr. Kelly, what would you do differently than the current administration in terms of, excuse me, I'm asking the wrong question, pardon me. What would you do differently to ensure safety of our airports, and is profiling an option?
Well, differently than the current administration, I don't think I have enough rebuttal cards to go into all that. But everything, for lack of a better word. And yes, profiling is always an option. Law enforcement, any effective law enforcement, they use profiling. People use profiling every day. It doesn't mean just racial profiling. It's someone's demeanor, how someone dresses. There is a history, there's a pattern here for terrorist attacks on the United States of America. It's young Muslim men between the age of 20 and 35, dressed in a certain type of attire, acting a certain way in an airport. If we are not examining some of these individuals more closely, then we are cheating American citizens out of their safety. We're not securing their liberties. So we can start there and do a little bit of that. Secondly, we need some funding for TSA security. We've all seen it at the airport. You sit in line for 2 hours, you walk right through. Who hasn't accidentally snuck a pocket knife through the x-ray machine only to find it later and turn it in? We do not have effective x-ray. We don't have effective training for the personnel in the airports right now. People are testing our systems as we speak. Terrorists are testing our systems as we speak. And a lot of that is due to the outstanding leadership of Janet Napolitano with the Department of Homeland Security. If we don't get some tough-minded individuals that realize that terrorists are coming here and they do want to harm our citizens here, they want to kill every man, woman, and child in this country. If we don't get some people in this administration that realize that, we are in a lot of trouble, and I do fear for future attacks on the United States of America.
Next.
Yes, I agree, and one of the bills that I will write, if elected as your congressman, will abolish this ridiculous money pit agency called the Department of Homeland Security. This is a money pit agency that wastes our tax money. I would privatize. Airports can afford to hire their own security. If you put these contracts up for bid to a private company who realize that if they don't perform their jobs, they're going to lose that contract and their job, you're going to see an increase, and you're going to see better security. Now, I travel with my job. I work a full-time job while I campaign, and it requires that I travel. And without fail, pull the guy with the Army backpack and duffel bag and stick him, for more screening when there's 3 Pakistanis behind me. It makes no sense. These are bored workers. I don't know how many of you travel frequently, but But I know when I go to the Tucson airport, when I go to Denver, when I go to Louisiana, Dallas, Texas, I see bored, uninterested workers. Complacency kills, and it's costing us our security in this ridiculous Department of Homeland Security, where the system worked, is killing us financially. We need to privatize this. The airports can afford it, and let's profile the right people. The flying imams, do you remember those guys a couple of years ago? Well, they won their lawsuit against U.S. Airways. Unacceptable. People did the right thing, and these guys still won their lawsuit. We have to change this, and we have to change it now before another attack occurs. Our security is not good enough at these airports. They're profiling the wrong people. Let's look at the right people.
Mr. Goss, that would be your rebuttal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next is for Brian Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. What do you view as Pakistan's role in the fight against terrorism?
Pakistan, of course, has nuclear weapons. It has been an ally of the United States, the same as India. What we have in Afghanistan right now is a mission that's undefined. And with an undefined mission, we can never have true victory, because it's not defined. We're propping up the second most corrupt government in the world, second only to Somalia. Remember, terrorists don't exist just in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda is an international loose-knit terrorist organization that exists in more than 100 countries around the world. General Jones, the National Security Advisor, tells us that our own military intelligence estimates that we have less than 100 Al-Qaeda members left in Afghanistan. So the question is, what are we still doing in Afghanistan when we have problems in places like Pakistan? Well, the fact is, it's unfortunate that we are engaged in unconstitutional nation building in Afghanistan. We have our provincial reconstruction teams there, and these soldiers cost the American taxpayer $1 million per year. Of course, we're risking their very lives. It is not the job of the United States military to be Afghanistan's version of Habitat for Humanity by building roads, schools, bridges, and digging wells. I talked for an hour 2 days ago with General Mueller. He's he's a friend of mine for years and the highest Air Force officer in Afghanistan right now. And he told me two things. He says, Brian, remember this, every action we take in Afghanistan there are at least 10 unintended consequences, and we will be paying for their government security for decades. Because the security necessary to secure Afghanistan costs 4 times the amount that Afghanistan's government bring in. We need to, I see light, we need to...
Mr. Miller, your time is up. You may finish your sentence.
We need to continue to provide safety for Americans by engaging in international intelligence channels, overhead surveillance, and covert ops, which is where we've had all our success, because the job of the military is to defend Americans.
Jesse Kelly would like to make a rebuttal.
Afghanistan is a war that must be won. We're not nation building over there. It's standard counterinsurgency operations. We are building up their security forces so that when we pull out, the Taliban do not immediately take over that nation, and immediately Al-Qaeda will move right back in. Pakistan, as you said, they are nuclear, they are fragile, they are right next door. A Taliban-run Afghanistan means a nuclear weapon in the hands of terrorists sooner rather than later. This intelligence, supposed intelligence that there are only 100 Al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan, there are 8 dead CIA agents recently who would greatly beg to differ about Al-Qaeda's influence still in Afghanistan. 9/11, 5,000 Americans were killed. It was an attack that was planned and launched from Afghanistan. If we walk away now and let it become a terrorist haven again, 10 years from now, more buildings will fall. I don't know when it became acceptable for any party, any politician in this country, to tuck tail and run. We are the United States of America. We win wars. We come home victorious. Our soldiers over there are doing the job. If the president will give them the tools they need, meaning when the general asks for 40,000 troops, you don't give him 30,000 troops. If we get them the tools they need and get the politicians out of the way, we will come home victorious, and Afghanistan, instead of being a terrorist haven, will be an ally in a region where we greatly, greatly need one.